All right, today we're going to talk about how a spinning reel works. This is a spinning reel on a spinning rod. This is an ultralight, so it's a small reel on a very light rod. This is my bluegill panfish rod and reel combination that I love. But a spinning reel is a spinning reel, whether it's an ultralight or a bigger reel. And this is how it works. This is how we release the line. We flip the bail over. This is the bail. I flipped it over and I'm holding the line on with my index finger right here. So when I cast, I release the line right about there when I'm casting. Since I'm in the house, I'm not casting. You can see that the line is free to come off the reel now because I let go. Now, you could start winding and flip the bail over like that. I typically, after a cast, will flip the bail over myself. That way I have control over when that bail gets flipped over. So after I cast, I stop the line from going off with my hand like this. I cover it up. I don't even think about it anymore. I just do it. I cast and cover, and see, I did it right there without even trying. I flip the bail over. Cast, cover, flip the bail over, and then start winding. And I cover because if the line keeps going out when the lure has hit the water, then I can get a mess. I can get loops and things like that. So now I'm holding the line ahead of the reel, holding it tight, and I'm winding. Now we have an anti-reverse mechanism. It's in different places on different reels, but this is the anti-reverse mechanism. Flip that thing over, and now the reel cannot go backwards. See that? I cannot pull the line out. But when I flip that back again, now I can pull the line off the reel with the bail closed. When we are finished fishing, it's nice to hook the line up, hook the hook on one of the edge of a guide, one of the frames of the guide. This one doesn't have a lure on it right now, but I've tied it to the edge of the guide. Now, instead of letting it go and having it backwind on its own, while the line is tight, I flip the anti-reverse, and that holds the line tight, keeps it from making a mess while we're traveling or whatever. If you prefer to wind with the right hand instead of the left, that can be done. We can remove this, totally remove this. By the way, for storage, you can just loosen that, and that'll allow the handle to fold down a little bit like that, in case you want it folded for storage or for traveling in your vehicle. It's out. Now we can pull the stem out, switch it over to the other side, stick it in the other side, and put this into this side and tighten it down. Then you could wind from the other side. I prefer winding with my left hand. So I'm going to leave it on this side. Now the drag system is for when you're fighting a fish, if you want the line to be released. And on this reel, the drag is right here at the top. This is how we loosen the spool too. That will allow line to go out. Hear that? I'm able to pull line out without the reel going backwards. That's the drag system. Now that's too loose because when we set the hook, we don't want the line to be released. We want it to be fairly tight so that we get a good hook set. So we'd want to adjust that drag just enough that the line doesn't break when the fish pulls. See, now it can pull out line without breaking the line, but I need it to be tight enough that I can still get a good hook set. Now what I do on my reels is I tighten the drag all the way. So there's no line coming out of there. There's no way you're gonna break the line if you pull hard. But I fish with the anti-reverse off, so I can always back wind. And when a fish pulls hard, I can back wind. I'll keep my hand on the reel and wind it backwards, or allow the fish to take out line by going backwards like this. Or I'll let that reel handle bump my hand. As it comes around, bump, bump, bump the heel of my hand. And I don't just let go of the reel handle when a fish is pulling out line, because then that fish could stop and the reel handle would keep going backwards, and that would make a mess in the reel, and then we wouldn't be able to wind forward, and probably that fish would end up breaking the line or getting off or whatever. So I just simply back wind when I'm catching a fish and that fish wants to take out line. That's something that's a little bit tricky, but you do get used to it, and I don't even think about it anymore now. So I did lose a fish of a lifetime one time because I accidentally bumped the anti-reverse mechanism. It was in an area like right down here on that particular reel, and it was a huge pike. So I had my hand like this, helping to raise that fish up to the surface because it was a big, heavy fish. And I accidentally bumped the anti-reverse mechanism, and that fish took a lunge, and I couldn't get the anti-reverse system off quick enough. I got it off, but on that particular reel, you had to wind forward just a smidge in order for it to release and go backwards. So that fish broke the line, and I've never had as big a pike on ever the rest of my life. That was a tough one to lose because I would have liked to have measured it. Sometimes the line will get under the spool. It'll get right under there, and often I can hear it. When there's line here, you can just hear a funny sound, and I keep an eye on this too, because when a line gets under the reel, if you keep winding, it gets all tangled on the spindle or whatever you call it at the end. Now, you see what I'm doing? I took that totally off. Now, I'm going to open up the bail, and then I can pull the spool right off. I pulled the spool off, and this is where the line gets all twisted around. So I like to notice it right away when there's line underneath the spool. That way I don't have a big mess in here, and those big messes on here tend to weaken the line too. So I'll wind a little bit. You can see what happens in there. See how that little spindle thing goes up and down? That pushes that spool up and down so that the spool is getting line on it evenly, because that's being pushed up and down as we wind in the line. See that? It goes up and down, up and down, up and down. I heard a little bit of a squeak there. Did you hear that? If there's some grease needed, there are 3 screws right here, and this plate would come off. I would probably have to remove the handle as well first to get that plate to come off. That would give me access to the gears inside of there in case I needed to put a little lubricant in there to get rid of a squeak inside of there. I won't open that with you guys watching. Easily done though, very easily done. So this goes back on. Often we need to seat it. There, did you see that? I turned it and seated it, right? There, it's seated. I'm going to tighten the spool back on the reel. All right, set that tight, the drag tight. I'm going to flip the anti-reverse. Whoops, I took it off, didn't it? Now it's set. This is how I hold a reel. I put the stem right between my pinky and my ring finger, like this. That's how I hold a rod with a spinning rod with a spinning reel on it. Thanks for watching. Hope you have fun fishing. Don't get too many tangles in your reel. That can be a frustrating part of fishing, but it is a part of fishing for sure. I still get tangles. Yeah, just this morning I had tangles while I was working with a fishing reel here in the house. All right, see everybody.